Cover 3 Tailgate. And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where the theory has been circulating since, the theory has been circulating since about 8:50-ish a.m. that there might be a connection. This is just a theory that there might be a connection to Florida State's result in week 0, a 24-21 loss to Georgia Tech, and whether or not there is sufficient facial hair on Danny Cannell's face. There is a theory circulating that not following through on the beard bet has introduced this. Danny, do you have any comment?
Has there ever been a walkout on the show? Like, has anybody ever just left? Because
I mean, you usually leave early because you've got to go to HQ.
But Tom is trolling me with the troll of all trolls with his T-shirt on. His
this old thing? T-shirt. I wear this all the time. What are you talking about?
I might walk off unless he changes that thing. That god awful ugly shirt. My goodness, is that ugly? That's disgusting. Just to rub it in this morning. You're on the list. You made the list. You're already on the list. Like, you might have been the first one on the list.
I am the list.
You're at the top. I cannot wait to have my revenge on you and everybody else. You know what? I figured it out. Tom's being today and everybody else who was in my mentions, rubbing in the loss and having fun. Your team lost. All that stuff. You know what they're like? They're like when you go to the casino and you're playing blackjack and you're on a heater. And sometimes they're even your boys. Like, sometimes they're even people in your party, and they come over and they start watching. And you know what they do? They want to see you lose. They're like, oh, it's a lot of money, but they kind of root against you. They want to see you lose. And they're just watching, and they don't have anything at stake. They don't have anything up on the table, and they just love watching you lose. And oh my gosh, do you see how much he lost on that last hand? That's what all these trolls are that are coming at me. They're like the casino, just the little people that don't play anything, and they just want to watch.
Oh, they're flies. They're flies around your food on a day when there's not enough wind. Yes. You know, you got seated by the trash can, a little too close to the trash can out there on the patio. And now I got to get one of those little, y'all ever seen those at the restaurants? How they got
they freak me out all the time. Yeah. They don't really do that much.
No.
Yeah. They don't want to play at the $100 a hand table because it's too expensive, but they're going to go, but they want to hang out with you and they want you to lose. Then you can go out into the bar and drink and pay for drinks instead of getting them for free. That's what they all are.
Okay.
So who wins first, Florida State or Bo Nix as a Denver Bronco?
Boy, it better be Florida State or else we are at DEFCON 5. If they don't.
Yeah. Oh, hey, listen, I do want to get
Danny has to grow a beard until Florida State wins a game.
I will do that. I can commit to that.
Okay.
All right.
You're going to be on
You got it. Clip it.
Clip it. You're going to be on
I literally just shaved to before the show today. And then I have Thursday. It could be a little scruff, but I think it'll still look good. And then Monday night, it'll be nice time for a trim.
If they lose this week, don't they have a bye the week after? Like, so it's like 2 weeks
until
they play their next game. So yeah.
My wife can deal with it for about 3 weeks. Like, that's about the length. After that, it gets too scraggly. That's when she started, putting the pressure on me to shave.
Okay. I want to get to actual football analysis from Danny Cannell and more that we can come back that we didn't hit on the instant reaction show. I know I've got a couple notes that not that I needed to rewatch everything, but that we just didn't get a chance to get out. But first, a few headlines along the way. On Sunday, man, I don't like the NCAA. The NCAA has decided to rain on week 1. Timing with this stuff is the worst, always. But here's what we've got in our hands. So the NCAA has officially handed the notice of allegations to Michigan and other parties. The quote officially, as it was handed to CBS Sports' Brandon Marcello, the NCAA can confirm that a notice of allegations has been distributed to the school and involved parties in the Michigan investigation. Now, NCAA policy gives Michigan up to 90 days to respond to this notice of allegations. So as we and try to look at what the next steps of this. If Michigan wanted to slow play this, they could slow play this the rest of the year, basically, or at least the regular season. A draft of the notice of allegations, you remember, was leaked. And there are individuals that are not there. Jesse Minter, gone. Jim Harbaugh, gone. Denard Robinson, a former staffer who might be linked to this, did a pretty good job. I liked Denard in the booth. Not Denard, excuse me. It was Devin Gardner. Was yeah. Different former Michigan quarterback. Denard Robinson, who also was dismissed, I think, because of an off-field issue along the way. So I asked Tom, we're not going to do the discourse. We're not going to do the discourse. No. I want a functional answer to this question. What is next for this story?
Probably not much of anything.
Okay.
Honestly, probably a few more years added to Harbaugh's show cause. That doesn't matter anyway. I don't know. I feel like if we haven't heard the official notice of allegations yet, we don't know what's in them. But from the reports that we've heard, it's very similar to what came out, a couple weeks ago, which does not make it sound like it's going to be that punitive. I think that however you have felt about this story for the last 13 or 14 months, whatever the hell it is now, is how everybody's going to continue feeling about it no matter what happens anyway. And I don't think the NCAA has that much power to do anything. Like, they suspended guys last year for a game. Like, Jim Harbaugh got the 4-game suspension. They've given him a show cause. Those guys are all gone from the program for the most part. Sharon Moore, he originally dodged the text messages, deleted them, but turned them in. They got them, and there weren't level 1 violations in the original report. So I don't think there's anything significant coming from that. Maybe Sharon Moore has to sit out a game or two, but if anybody's sitting there hoping that like Michigan's going to have to vacate last season, or they're going to lose scholarships, or there's going to be postseason bans or something that come from this, I think they are in to be disappointed.
Agree? You think Michigan slow plays it? You think they just don't you just wait almost the full 90 days to respond? Then after the response, then there's the NCAA. Like, we wouldn't even have to deal with talking about any particular punishments potentially until January or February. Would that line up with your expectation?
Yeah, but I mean that's really kind of what I think they will do, just based on how they've played it so far, right?
Yeah.
I think you would have to have more specifics as to exactly what is in this to have a different opinion. Like, their track record so far says they slow play it, which is probably not a bad idea.
Yeah.
There will be a massive reaction from this.
Oh, yeah.
From Ohio State fans that are upset.
They're already
like, wait a second. We can't slow play this. We need the death penalty now. They're going to be the ones that are upset. The other thing, too, is I think the timing of this announcement was very specific because the Connor Stallions doc comes out tomorrow night. Like, I think that's a big reason they're trying to get in front of this, just to get it out of the way. And I think most important, like, the one thing I'm looking for, and Tom kind of alluded to it, was maybe Sharon Moore gets a game or two. Mm-hmm. And the significance of that is week 2, Texas comes to town. Like, Fresno State, you're probably fine. Don't worry about it. But if he's on, is he penalized for that game? Do they agree to the penalty? Do they fight it? Do they slow play it? Like, that to me is the only thing that gets interesting about this.
Yeah, Michigan opens the season at home against Fresno State this Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time is that week 1 kickoff. God, feels good to be looking at week 1 kickoff times. Then, as you mentioned, week 2, the Texas Longhorns come to the Big House. Also, ghosts of anything else?
I just wanted to say, was it the Arkansas defensive coordinator who was publicly talking about stealing signs last week?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Tavares Robinson. He said, not Tavares Robinson. Travis, forget his name. He was at UCF when I was there. Mm-hmm. He was a star in the making. He's going to be a head coach one day. He said everybody's doing it, but he said everyone's doing it the way that everybody does it.
Mhm.
He did not say they're out there buying tickets on the 50-yard line
Mhm.
to other teams. He did not say they're, have this hyper intense, psychotic former Marine out there with a manifesto that has this highly detailed system. So, but by the way, I don't know if you guys caught, I was looking for a lot in the preview for the Connor Stallions doc. It sure seems like his defense is going to be everybody's doing it. Like, I think that's what Connor Stallions is going to be featured saying is everyone was doing this. We were just smarter about it. We took advantage of it more. And here we go. Like, I think that's going to be his, his defense.
That gets to my overarching point about this story all along. It's like Connor Stallions clearly broke a billion rules to do it. But the idea from fans that Michigan ever gained a truly significant advantage from it when everybody knows everybody signs and is constantly stealing their signs is the one part of this story that has always driven me nuts.
Buddy, I've seen enough hammer emojis to know that there's going to be some strong reactions if our predictions are to play out. Okay, speaking of ghosts of the offseason headlines that are trying to mess with my football, UConn to the Big 12 apparently back on. We've got multiple reports indicating that UConn officials have made trips to go meet with Big 12 leadership. We've got additional reporting that says that this week will mark a presentation from Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark to some of the conference's leadership in terms of what a UConn to the Big 12 edition might look like. But does this make sense to you from the Big 12 side of things?
Oh, wow. It's early.
Oh,
Double tap mute.
it wasn't me. Wasn't me. Yes, I think it does make sense because it is far easier and probably cheaper for the Big 12 to improve and gain a lot bigger market share of the elite basketball programs than it is the elite football programs, right? I don't think Clemson and Florida State are going to go to the Big 12 unless the Big 12 overspends to such an extent that it would make their members very uncomfortable, right? So, yeah, like getting UConn and have UConn not come for football, I guess, would be the best of both worlds. UConn football is terrible. UConn basketball is awesome.
But they'd come in 2031 with football, though, right?
Right.
Like the football program.
That's assuming that like these conferences are even somewhere around in 2031. Like if the Big 10 and the SEC don't merge by then.
I don't know. Like, I get it, but it's just if I'm a UConn fan, like, do you not remember what life was like when you were in the American, like not too long ago, and how desperate you were to get back to the Big East and blah blah blah? Now you're going to go to the Big 12, but it's weird to me in that everybody got this at the same time. Like, think about how typically clandestine these conference realignment meetings are, how nobody ever says anything. It's always, some anonymous account on a message board saying, I saw this person at this restaurant with this person. And then suddenly on Saturday, like there's like 8,000 reporters all talking about this meeting. Who's leaking it and why? What are they trying to gain? That's what I want to know.
I think they're trying to convince Big 12 presidents who might not be in a rush to continue this expansion process until they figure out what life looks like after their most recent expansion. They're probably trying to sway them with the idea of what the greatest basketball conference in America would do, because that's the only selling point. I mean, the selling point is we're bringing in Arizona, right? So now we would have Kansas and Arizona and UConn and Houston, like legitimately 4 of probably the preseason top 8 would be all coming from the same conference. So I get that side of it, but it's I didn't love the idea. I don't love the idea of all of a sudden Big East basketball falling apart. So I don't know. Nope. As a college basketball fan, I would prefer if UConn stayed put.
Also, who is still in the Big East? Like if you're a college football only fan, like I am, and you don't watch college basketball, like I'm sure a lot of our audience is, who is still in the Big East?
It's all the ones that don't play FBS football.
So like St. John's,
in Villanova,
UConn, Villanova,
Georgetown,
DePaul, Creighton, Marquette.
Okay,
Creighton, Marquette, Seton Hall.
My thing is like the Big East just signed a big TV deal for basketball. And now UConn's going to leave again.
And that big
wonder
TV
who's
deal,
leaking this. That's all I'm saying.
the big TV deal was 100%. Excuse me, I am not a part of those discussions, but I imagine, as a somewhat informed outsider, that big TV deal was boosted by the UConn Huskies winning back-to-back national championships. You think your value with your media rights partners goes up when you got 2 titles right there? Yeah, I would say so. All right, a little bit of one more newsy piece before we get to reaction from the weekend. There is a proposal to end the post-spring practice transfer portal window. Tom, you in favor?
Yeah. I mean, just like, I feel like if you're a coach or you're in the business of trying to figure teams out before the season starts and get a good idea of who they are, you are 100% in favor of this, because that way you've got an idea of what the teams are going to be and there's not all this sudden late movement. So yes, I think selfishly, I am big time interested in this.
But can they eliminate it without getting sued?
I mean, it's an interesting question. Like getting sued and losing, or just getting sued? I'm quite sure somebody would sue over it. I'm not entirely sure that somebody would sue and win. I don't know if you necessarily have a right to move multiple times, per year. Maybe you do. I don't think that they can get this and shrink the window to 30 days. If you do this, you probably need to have a little more time for everybody to kind of batch process who's going in. Okay, we missed on this kid. We need a backup option here. And also to give the players, a little more opportunity to kind of evaluate the ever-changing landscape. Because if it goes to a 30, or especially a 30-day single window, would be pretty crazy. It's also happening like right during the playoffs.
Yeah,
this is like, from a content standpoint, like, I love it for some personal things that we do on Cover 3. From a content standpoint outside of Cover 3, that sucks, right? Like, what we should do is have it be at the end of the spring semester, I think. But they won't.
And if we were worried about student athletes, like students in there, then you would want them to finish out the school year. Like, you could have everything in order, start fresh in the fall semester. It makes totally more sense if you did that.
They're just a bunch of overpaid athletes to me now, Danny. I don't care about their rights.
Well, all right. So do you know who I thought about? I thought about the Ohio Bobcats, who went through all of spring practice and then lost a ton of starters in the spring window. I thought about the Pitt Panthers, who lost projected defensive starters in the spring window. I felt like if you were to eliminate the spring transfer window, it probably helps out top group of 5 teams. It probably helps out some middle of the pack power conference teams that had a situation where they were getting poached because of an injury in spring practice or a misevaluation that one of the big dogs made when they go through spring practice. That I don't see a lot of teams that are outside of that top of the food chain getting better from the spring transfer window. I mostly see those teams getting worse. And if you make it just one window only and it's winter only, limited sample size, but based on the experience that we've just had, I would think that would be a little bit better for those top G5, for some of those middle of the pack power conference teams.
Yeah, and I think that everybody's always screaming that they want parity in this sport. Parity. I think eliminating the spring transfer window can actually help achieve that a little bit, going along with what you're saying. Because if you are one of these top programs, right, and you've got expectations for your team, you go into the spring and you realize, oh shit, we need to fix this. Then you go pluck that guy from the G5 and you fix your team. This could actually lead to the quote unquote blue bloods who miss on a couple guys or failed to develop them having to actually pay consequences for it.
I think we're already seeing that parity, though, at least among the P5 schools. We talked about it last week with Georgia, like how they can still dominate high school recruiting. High school recruiting is still where you get the vast majority of your elite players. It's why the certain teams stay on top, because they dominate high school recruiting, not the portal. But they can't keep those guys on the roster for as long. Some of those guys are ready to play, but there's not a starting spot. So I think we are starting to see a lot of parity in this sport. And I think next year we'll have like even more as those very top teams, Ohio State and Georgia, start to lose a lot of guys. In my mind, I don't see certain teams that are ready to like step up and take those spots and be, like way clearly above everybody else in the sport. I think we're very close to an NFL style thing where you have 20-ish teams that on any given Saturday can beat somebody.
We certainly saw parity in Ireland, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of, coming up on the other side, every single Monday, we like to go under the hood. So coming up on the other side, check in with the Knoll boys. Any more thoughts on Florida State? Plus, SMU. Excuse me. I think the ponies need new hooves. We'll talk about what was a very, very close call out in Reno and more from week 0, plus a look ahead to Thursday's biggest games. Next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, Saturday night, we give you that instant raw reaction. We went live at 9 p.m., which means we still had a little bit of late night football to recap, plus a chance to look back at everything that we might have missed. We call it Pun for the Review. There were terrible calls. Do we want to go ahead and jump in?
After further review.
After further review.
After further review.
All right. DK, we missed you Saturday night. Apparently you were enjoying
I didn't miss you guys.
Apparently you were enjoying yourself. But we missed you. So I am not I do want this. I'm very curious.
Mm-hmm.
What did you see? Like what when you were watching that game, what did you see? And let's start talking about the next part. How do you diagnose this? And what do you do moving forward? Have expectations changed, and in what way? That kind of.
I thought you saw a team that came in possibly a little bit overrated and a team that came in possibly a little bit underrated. And you saw two potentially good teams going toe to toe. I do want to make this first and foremost about Brent Key and the job that he's done at Georgia Tech. Like a hire that we all liked, that probably had things worked out a little bit differently. Even Georgia Tech might have gone a different direction if a certain coach would have left at the time when they were trying to get him. I'm talking about Willie Fritz, because that was all the speculation was out there.
Yeah.
But I think Brent Key is the perfect man for this job. I thought he had his team more prepared to play. I thought they were out hustled, out coached, out physicaled. Any way you look at it, I thought Georgia Tech just looked like the better team. Now, if we go back and we look at, the 4- and 5-star ratings, Florida State is the more talented team. But so to me, I don't think DJ, because I know a lot of Florida State fans are in my mentions and they're complaining about DJ. I didn't think he was even close to the biggest problem of what we saw on the field. I mean, I thought if you would have told me after the game, here's his stat line, he's 18 for 29 for $180, and didn't have the big interception, just kind of controlled if they were 5 of 12 from third down. Like I would have said, oh, okay, I like their chances. The bigger concern, far bigger concern for me, is an offensive line, which was highly touted, and an experienced offensive line, and a defensive line, which was talked about as potentially one of the best in the ACC, if not the country, getting pushed around out there repeatedly. I mean, those back-to-back drives to close out the game when it was 14-14, Georgia Tech marched down the field methodically. And then when it was 21-all and they're able, there was 6.5 minutes left when Georgia Tech gets the ball, and you're thinking, all right, worst case, they either score or they get a field goal, but we're going to get another possession, or we'll get a stop. And this is when the defense finally can step up, and they couldn't get off the field. Those to me are way more concerning than DJ. I thought we got what we kind of expected from DJ to start the season. Conservative, playing a little bit more close to the vest. Let's try to run the football. But while the offense is figuring things out, the defense can dominate. They're that good. They can shut this opponent down. And maybe that's why a lot of people like the under. Let's just, lower scoring game. Let's just keep controlling the line of scrimmage and you get out of Dodge. But as we saw, that didn't unfold.
I did the rewatch. My thoughts are really kind of what I had on Saturday. I thought the defensive line was really far from the biggest problem, to be honest. I thought if you're going to play two high looks, then your backers have got to trigger and get downhill fast. Like when that double shows, you got to go. And I thought David Hale had a really good stat on this. Florida State, I think, missed 8 tackles on the 20 runs that went outside of the tackles, allowing like 6.2 per carry and a bunch of first downs. I first guessed FSU's linebacker coach hire of Randy Shannon. Florida and Miami fans laughed at FSU and Norvell for making that hire. I thought it was a bad hire. The guy's a poor recruiter, and I just don't think he's done a great job with the linebacker room. I thought that was a much bigger problem, personally, than the defensive line. Offensively, I thought that they just kind of thought what they had would be enough.
Right.
Their passing game was really hot trash through most of fall camp. It was pretty good over the final week, which I thought, okay, maybe after the bye week, they'll incorporate that more. And to me, that's clearly what they did, right? I don't think they trusted what they saw from the passing game in the final days of fall camp. So they tried to just go with what was working. They just got outnumbered in the box like a lot. Some of the late rotations and late blitzes from Georgia Tech. DJ was not you would hope a guy who's 24 can check out of it. But to Tom's point, like when you're a team that is transfer dominant, like you've not played together a whole lot. And I thought that they were very reliant on some of the helmet communication stuff. If you watched, they weren't playing a crazy slow tempo, but they rarely snapped the ball before 15 seconds was up. So they were clearly using all of the time with the helmet comms. They were just pretty much outnumbered in the box on a lot of these runs. Also to the point where, Tech clearly did not believe that Florida State trusted its passing game, which was the correct assumption, by the way. But Tech was doing this kind of stuff and like loading the box and doing some of these late run blitzes and bringing the safeties on 2nd and 11. Like they were correctly guessing that Florida State would run the football there. So Florida State trying to get back to a manageable down and distance by running the ball, maybe to get back to a 3rd and 6 or something like that against, looks that maybe you would hope normally to get, but they weren't getting those looks. That was tough, man. Honestly, they're pretty outnumbered there. They've got to be able to check out and throw the ball, or we'll see. We'll kind of see what it can be. That's not going to work, obviously.
I disagree with your assessment of the defensive line.
Okay.
This stat is not perfect, but it does tell a story. I tweeted it yesterday. Yards before contact per rush, not including anything with the quarterback. So no scrambles, no sacks, although there was only 1 sack in the game, and it wasn't by Florida State. Georgia Tech averaged 3.33 yards per carry before anybody touched them. Florida State averaged half. And yes, some of that is due to Georgia Tech stacking the box, but that is going to be a problem for Florida State all year, because what they saw, teams that are coming up are like, well, why are we going to do anything else until they prove they can do it? And we saw last year with DJ, at Oregon State, they were a very heavy run dominant team, but they took vertical shots. And DJ, I think he had his highest air yards per attempt in his career last year by a lot. Either, like you were saying, Norvell and that staff have no faith. I'm guessing since DJ was kind of doing it last year, it's more a receiver question than it is DJ. So they don't have a whole lot of faith in their ability to do that right now. Until they develop the ability to do that, I think you're going to see them struggle.
I would say if and until. We don't know that that's going to come along and they're going to have a good enough passing game.
Well, that's the thing. Is so
they also need to run DJ.
Instinctively,
he doesn't like to run.
Yeah, well, guess what?
He looks slimmer too. Like that,
Dude,
we were talking about that before the game. He looks smaller than he has in the
You paid the guy to come in and help you win football games, okay? Sorry.
Do you remember us on here though? I remember going all the way back to Clemson when they were running him. I'm like, that guy does not want to run the football.
It looks slow. Everything was
he
looks slow developing.
and he looks
not an NFL guy with the way he reads
natural.
defenses.
Yeah.
So, if he doesn't want to run.
But I don't think it's not that he doesn't want to, he's trying to protect his body. I just don't think he's a runner. He is not a guy who wants to run, period. He'd rather throw from the pocket.
Design run stuff at Oregon State though.
So the biggest glaring indictment to me on where Florida State thinks, because in the first half you're watching all right, they gashed him the first drive. So of course Georgia Tech would say, are we going to sit back and get gashed all day, or are we going to start bringing some guys up and challenging them? And then they're like, wait, they're not even going to take any shots. the biggest indictment to me on where kind of Norvell thinks about the offense was before halftime. And I think I texted you guys, I'm like, this is an F in clock management. They were going slow. They weren't using their timeouts. And they were basically playing for a field goal at the end of the half, which thankfully they got. I mean, wasn't when it wasn't that
It was
impressive.
the negative play that forced it to be like a 59-yarder.
Exactly. But they weren't going no huddle. They weren't using their timeouts. And that to me was they're not even close to being able to execute an offense. And Mike Norvell doesn't think they're ready to. So I'm with you guys. And it's gonna be interesting because they got Thomas Castellanos coming to town next week. And I saw Haynes King get on the outside a lot through that game to extend plays, and he's not as fast as Castellanos. Like, they better not hang their heads very too long. So while we're burying Florida State, which I'm totally okay with that. Like, they got outplayed, they got outworked, they got beat. What is the level of concern? That's where I'm trying to find out for myself, because I do think that even going back to ACC media days, they were kind of laughing about the Georgia Tech game. It was international. Like, I think they took the opponent lightly. But usually if you're talented, you can flip that switch and at some point kind of wake up and you start imposing your will. They did not have that gear. All right, so let's say they come back and they're mad and Norvell's mad and everybody's angry. Are they the type of team that all of a sudden can pull it together? Are we looking at a season where, all right, DJ was brought in so the floor doesn't bottom out and the floor is about 8 wins? Like, is that what we're looking at?
I talked on Saturday night about this, and I will talk about it again on this Saturday when all these teams are finishing their first games. I don't want to take anything too seriously about what we see in any team's first game of the season.
That's no fun.
But like, I didn't have Florida State winning the ACC.
They're not going bowling. Go ahead, say it.
No, I didn't have Florida State not winning the ACC this season anyway. I think Clemson's going to win the league, so nothing about that has changed in my mind. It's just like, I don't know. I think if anything, my ceiling for this team changed. If I'm considering it, I think the floor is probably still pretty good, because I do think that talent-wise, compared to most of the teams that are on that schedule, they're going to be okay. And you figure out what your weaknesses are in a good coaching staff. And I do think that Mike Norvell is a good coach, and they have a good coaching staff, can fix things and, put some duct tape on some areas to get things going as the regular season rolls along. So I don't think the bottom is going to fall out on this team. It's just, I do think that getting to the playoff, if that's a goal, is probably more difficult. Because honestly, I mean, Georgia Tech fans, I'm wearing a Georgia Tech shirt, but I still don't think you're a great team. Like, I think you're a bowl team. I don't think you're going to be the kind of team that finishes 9-3 and everybody's at the end of the season like, oh, well, that loss wasn't as bad as we thought it was it? So I think that's the kind of impact that game had on me for anything as far as the Seminoles are concerned.
I agree with that. I also think it's important to remember, like, evaluating the quality of play on a down-to-down basis as opposed to just the scoreboard. Like, what is, which I think we do a pretty good job of on this show, but like, is the narrative different if Florida State falls on either of those, Georgia Tech fumbles, right? I don't know. Like, is the narrative different if what's his name doesn't slip down on that one big pass play? Like, again, this stuff happened. Like, you can't undo yesterday's newspaper, but we are probably talking about it a lot differently. For example, SMU played really poorly almost that entire game. If Nevada's kick returner does not call for a fair catch, fumble it, and then recover it at his own 1, we are probably leading the show with SMU and not FSU, because that would have been the biggest upset we've had in the sport in like 3 years. I mean, they were 28.5-point favorite. So there were some things I think you can take away that are like, okay, they can build upon that. There are some things you can take away, but like, they can't really play it that way anymore. They have to show some different things, probably cut down the rotations a little bit. Like, if you're going to play a game with 50 plays, then you need to have an NFL style rotation. Okay. The idea of keeping people fresh is does not need to be top of mind because you're not playing 70 or 80 plays. Like, in the NFL, you don't rotate offensive linemen, and your backup linebackers are not playing very many snaps. Like, Patrick Willis is playing every freaking play, right? Those guys don't come off the field. So I think they'll cut down the rotation some. I think you need to play. You like your corners a lot. The corners played really well. You probably need to play more single high and just deal with the consequences, which I think they thought that like we discussed on the pregame show, they would eventually win in the red zone, or get Georgia Tech behind the chains. And they did a couple times, and they got them off the field a couple times with that. But then King, on the drive that kind of changed the game, King made that great throw after they were in like 3rd and 12 or whatever it was, and that kind of changed it. But they did not win in the red zone. Like Tech continued to out-execute them and really confuse, especially the backers and the safety rotations constantly. Like they're a man short, like repeatedly. It's so we'll see what kind of changes they can make there.
Before we get to SMU, I did want to connect a dot to something, Bud, that you mentioned before the show. So this was Georgia Tech, Florida State had 14 total possessions, 7 each. It is the fewest number of possessions in an FBS on FBS game since 2020. Bud, you mentioned before the show, you said helmet. What is the connection between helmet communications and pace? You mentioned earlier that it felt like they were I think you said Florida State was very reliant on the helmet communications. Or after, again, small sample size, but after week 0, are you starting to adjust your pace expectations based on the way that the play clock is dropping to 15 for a lot of these teams?
Not a ton yet. And I thought I would, but in looking at it, I mean, Nevada is now running the Kansas system with Matt Luck. So that's just not, like, to me, that's not a consequence of the helmet comms. That is, they are running Kansas' system, which is like extremely, extremely slow. New Mexico is running basically what Bronco ran at UVA with Jason Beck, and that is sort of like a medium pace type thing. Hawaii played like every single person that has ever been on their roster in that game, and that was a weird one to watch, and they had a bunch of wind going on. So I'm not adjusting it too much yet, but there will be some teams that really wanted to like use the helmet comm down to the 15 every single play. And for those teams, you'll just need to kind of watch and adjust. I think the important thing to be looking for is kind of like the median play clock number, right? One of the reasons why the Florida State Georgia Tech game was so damn slow is because the ball almost never hit the ground with incompletions.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and Florida State couldn't get off the field, and Georgia Tech had it in its game plan. It's like, you know what sounds great? An 8-minute drive. Hey, that 8-minute drive was fun. Let's go do another, 8-minute drive.
It was a clean, very clean game. There weren't many penalties.
Nope.
This is something I think is I think this is a thing. I think we're going to see fewer turnovers in the sport because, like, I don't think it's the helmet comms is, hey, make sure to throw it here. I think it's more like, and Danny, you could speak to this. I think it's, hey, remember, on this play, what kills us is this. Like, avoid doing that. Like, I don't think they're saying, hey, throw it here. But it's like, remember.
Don't throw it to the flat.
Yeah. Like, who is hot? Where can we absolutely not go with the ball if you're hot? Like that type of stuff. I mean, King threw no interceptable passes. DJ threw 0 interceptable passes. The Nevada kid maybe threw 1 up. New Mexico, 0.
Mm-hmm.
Preston Stone just underthrew a ball, but I don't think it was a bad read.
Also, what we're seeing a lot of, and this was what the ACC really, I mean, this is what you could argue the talent of the quarterbacks, but the conference of the quarterbacks was how much experience they've had. Like, these are experienced quarterbacks who have played a lot of football. You would hope at some point they start realizing, you know what, turnovers aren't very good. But I agree, like Bud, I think what Bud's talking about, that if I was a coach, that's what I would do. If I was a quarterback, that's the type of reminders I would want. Hey, don't forget your side adjust off the corner blitz. Or, if they bring, strong side safety, you got to go check out the other way. Just those little reminders that are very, much in the finer details with, supposedly 20 hours of a playbook. Or if you put in new plays for that week, just those little subtle reminders is what I would want. Little matchups. Hey, we really like so-and-so on this route. Just keep an eye on the go route if it's there. Just those little subtle reminders. What I think, and I don't think we saw this, but where I think they could get in trouble is where they try to overcoach. And they're like, yeah, don't forget your progression here on this route, or they try to force the issue. That's when quarterbacks could get in trouble. I also thought it was pretty interesting. It seemed like Haynes King was having trouble hearing, because he was repeatedly like this. And there was a couple times he looked back over. Like Aviva Stadium, I think it only seats 50 grand. It's not exactly a ruckus crowd. Like, if we get into the Shoe or Baton Rouge or Tiger, like anywhere that's significant crowd noise, is that going to be an issue? I don't think it will, Like, I think I'm just probably like, he was just cut. Like, some guys feel more comfortable. They can hear better. But I do wonder if that's going to be an issue with crowd noise, potentially
so
hearing.
on the
Because it's not anywhere near as loud as NFL. NFL stadiums are never loud. And so you never see them struggle with it. We know how college football fans roll. Like, it's going to be loud. These quarterbacks could have trouble hearing.
On the weekend, FBS quarterbacks threw 180 passes. 2 were deemed by PFF as turnover-worthy passes.
Wow.
It broke my heart.
Only one was picked, obviously.
It broke my heart to open the whoopsie daisy rate sheet on Sunday and see all those 0%. It was like, what are we even doing here? Here's a little fun fact trivia. After week 0, which 2 teams lead the nation in EPA per dropback?
Is Montana State
Mexico.
one? Oh, no, wait. FBS teams.
You're both wrong. It's Georgia Tech and Florida State.
Oh. So the game with no passing attack is the one that leads in EPA per dropback.
They were also through the shortest passes outside of Nevada, as far as air yards are concerned.
You had underdogs go 4-0. You had unders go 3-1. The only game that went over was Montana State's furious fourth quarter comeback against New Mexico.
And dogs they all covered by more than a touchdown.
They covered yes. Yeah.
Week 0 is kind of weird.
Well, which is why it's great to overreact to it.
Right. Exactly.
All right. On the SMU side, if we're going to say Florida State, what's the level of panic? What's the level of concern? I mean, but I'll let you get first word on this one. You were a naysayer against the hype, but does that expose even more than you expected going into it in terms of how SMU is going to stack up in 2024?
So very quickly, I think Nevada needs some serious credit here. Like, to get that offense ready to go with the amount of turnover they had, and you're having to play Brendan Lewis, who is not a good player. And they like to get that offense installed with all the motions and stuff that they run off it. Like, credit to Matt and those guys on that staff for getting that thing ready. Like, that was insane that they were able to confuse SMU to that extent. But it looked like watching Kansas or Liberty, right? If you're a Penn State fan, I think you're absolutely thrilled with that result. You're like, man, we might be able to get this offense installed with quickness. Maybe we won't have these game 1 hiccups. Now they got to go play in Morgantown, so maybe a little tougher than playing a home game in weird weather at elevation. But for SMU, it just didn't look crisp and easy. And you would think with the amount of returning production that they have that it would. They talk a lot, I guess, to the broadcast crew because it was a talking point about how they have 6 or 7 receivers. I hate that, honestly. Like, I don't like rotation at receiver. The best offenses don't do it. It's a major, like, I read all these beat report guys, all the reports in the offseason. If you tell me that you have a really deep receiver room and you got a nice rotation at receiver, I immediately think your receivers aren't very good. Okay. Personally, like, I just don't.
You need alphas. I want
give me 3
Receiver by
clear
committee
options
is a
and
bad
question marks
concept.
at 4 and 5.
Yeah, receiver by committee is not a good thing. Okay, running back by committee, fine. Receiver by committee, no. I'd rather have 1 stud and 2 kind of whatever, Jags.
Like, it's if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have 1. If you got 7 receivers, you don't have 1.
Also, I mean, they did. I don't know if they have some tells they need to work on or something. And Choate can clearly coach like that.
Yes.
The coaching quality. No team improved their coaching more year over year than Nevada. I think they went from the worst coach in FBS to a really, really good football coach in Jeff Choate. So, like, that, to me, I've upgraded them a lot from the coaching standpoint.
Choate the GOAT.
I mean, SMU is just seamlessly fitting in with the ACC by, first of all, scheduling a G5 opponent on the road early in the season. I mean, they probably should have lost the game if they were going to fit in perfectly, because we've seen that narrative unfold. I was like Bud. I thought they would go under the win total. I did not see them as a pick for the ACC title game. I didn't think it was going to show up here, though. I do think you're probably a little bit concerned if you're Rhett Lashley. Clearly, week 0, overreactions, you won. Like, that's the most important thing. An ugly win is way better than a good loss, right? You'd rather have that unfold. But I also wonder, there's been a lot of speculation about Preston Stone. I know statistically he was pretty good last year, but is he going to be a guy that excels at the next level in the ACC? We saw them go to Jennings. Stone wasn't exactly the picture of, what you would want from quarterback play. So I'm a little bit curious to see how that position unfolds.
Yeah, my takeaway from that game is I thought defensively they looked pretty okay. Offensively, I think RJ Maryland is very good, but I also think RJ Maryland is bigger than everybody on their offensive line. Like, they look small to me, and I wonder how that is going to impact them when they're playing Power 5 teams every single week.
And by wonder, you mean
I wonder.
Well, look, we know, Rhett Lashley challenged Mike Norvell to play NCAA football 25 instead of doing the coin toss. He has, spoken about he does like the game. He's down to play the game. When SMU needed to score and they're just flexing RJ Maryland out to the side, that is a video game approach of like, I've got my best player and we're going to do whatever we can to get my best player the ball. Now it worked. So congratulations. I'm glad having RJ Maryland. One of the reasons that you do is so that when things start to break down and you're not sure who you trust, you've got a big body who's a matchup problem, but does not give me a ton of confidence in terms of, okay, so what happens when you play a defense that does have bodies and does have answers to some of those matchup problems that RJ Maryland presents? Because you're not going to be able to do that against everybody on the schedule.
You guys see me like waving to everybody. Like, I have a glass wall in front of me here at the office. And there's like, everyone's like, okay. Noah comes by and he looks like he's, I'm trying to keep him away from sharp objects. There's our producer for a Spotlight who's went to Florida State. Like, it's either one way or the other. Jenny Dell's like, are you okay? Okay.
It's the CBS family, man.
It's going to be all right.
Yeah.
If you need to talk.
Jenny,
How long the new face of the network, pushing the pile, the new NFL podcast everyone needs to go check out. I say hi to him. I haven't seen him in a while. And then I'm literally I got to go start Cover 3. And he goes, go Knowles, huh? I'm like, he's a little too big to take down, though.
I was going to say, don't. just laugh and say, that's right, big guy.
Yeah, that's right, big guy. Slap on the back.
Good thing we're starting a podcast right now, because if we weren't.
Anything else from week 0? I want to make sure we get a little Thursday look ahead here before we get out of here. Anything else stand out? I mean, Tom, I don't want to steal your thunder here. I do like it was disappointing that New Mexico could not finish the job. It was disappointing that Nevada could not finish the job. Ultimately, those were two teams who played well enough to win and clearly did not have it together enough to be able to finish the job. Bud mentioned the fair catch. That everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for both of those underdogs who were in a position with a lead in the fourth quarter to be able to win. But those are also two teams that we thought were going to be at the very bottom of the Mountain West. So I'm excited to continue to track the progress of both those teams, both with new head coaches. And that is going to be, whether you are Boise State, whether you're Fresno State, whether you are UNLV, those games are going to be much more difficult than I think we would have expected when you were talking to us in July about what that was going to be. So I'm excited about that, especially as it pertains to the Mountain West picture.
Yeah, it's bad teams need to learn how to win, and they don't know how to do it yet. That's one of the biggest obstacles. It's like you can improve what they're doing. You can improve their performance, but when it comes to the fourth quarter and it's doing the things that win games, like teams that have been there, the act like you've been there before kind of cliche. Teams that have been there before know how to close games. Teams that haven't don't.
Yep. Coming up on the other side, we got a loaded Thursday and a big week 1. So we're going to go ahead and get you started going inside the matchup for North Carolina at Minnesota and North Dakota State at Colorado. All that and more next. Back here on the Cover 3 podcast as we are with you on Monday. That means we are just a few days away from the start of week 1. And at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we will get things rolling with a power conference on power conference matchup. It will be the North Carolina Tar Heels going to play the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And while there was a time at FanDuel Sportsbook where you can make every moment more, that the North Carolina Tar Heels were an underdog. As I pull it up here right now, the North Carolina Tar Heels are now favored by 1.5 at FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. We will save our picks or locks, obviously, for Thursday, hitting those Thursday games right at the top of the show, 11 a.m. Eastern time for your week 1 locks. But as we look at how we think these two teams might match up, of course, week 0 gave us all kinds of curveballs. Of course, both these teams are going to have new starting quarterbacks. They both also have new defensive coordinators. Maybe, different ways you could adjust to that news for each team. Danny, what are you looking at when it comes to North Carolina, Minnesota, and some of the biggest keys in one of the biggest toss-up games that we have between power conference teams?
How I am anxiously watching to see what Mac Brown does with these quarterbacks. Tom had the old axiom before, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. Well, Mac Brown would quickly like to try to dispel that, because they are still trying to figure out who the one is, if it's Max Johnson or Connor Harrell. So that's one thing I'm very curiously watching with North Carolina, also to see if their defense has improved at all with Jeff Collins at the helm. And then I feel like Minnesota's just this team that kind of flying under the radar. Don't feel like I know a ton about them. I'm like, just, and I think we'll see a healthy dose of Amarian Hampton, the running back for UNC. But I'm genuinely, this is one of those games where I'm kind of like, I'm eager to learn both of these teams, what I think they're going to be this season.
I mean, to me, is Darius Taylor or Jackson going to play for Minnesota?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody betting this clearly thinks that one or both of those players are out. And Minnesota has pretty behind Jackson at receiver. So if he's out, I mean, their offense obviously probably won't be very good. I think Max Brosmer is a real upgrade over Kelly McManus, but I don't know that. I think he is. Maybe we'll see if that's actually true. I like a lot of UNC's skill guys, man. I think they're really good, but I don't really think that they have a quarterback on this team this year. So we'll see. It's an interesting one, obviously, and I'm going to watch the heck out of it. But they did shut down Hampton last year pretty easily, and they basically said Drake May beat us, and Drake May did, 'cause he threw for like 450. So,
Yeah, difference is it's a different Minnesota defense now.
Yeah, no Joe Rossi.
With a different coordinator. It's like, I mean, but still you could follow the similar kind of game plan. And I think it would be far more effective, because it's like they don't have Drake May anymore, and we don't know who the quarterback is. So if you can slow down Amarian Hampton in that run game, you could really kind of hamper what North Carolina's ability to do on offense. The question for me is, I don't know, like you said, if Taylor's out, if Jackson's out, I don't know what Minnesota has the capability to do on offense. To me, honestly, I'm very interested in this game, because these are two teams that I really don't have a clear read on going into the season. So to get a chance to see them will help me kind of decipher what these teams are. But this also strikes me as the kind of game that could look a lot like what we saw with Georgia Tech and Florida State, in that there will be limited possessions and the clock will be running, because I don't know how much either team will be throwing the ball. And if they are, I don't know if we're going to see a lot of deep passes. I think it's going to be, especially on the Minnesota part, I think we're going to see a lot of short passes, because that's kind of what Brosmer did while he was at New Hampshire or Delaware. I can't remember.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. There we go. I don't know why I was thinking Delaware. Just Joe Flacco on the brain all the time.
Delaware State.
Yeah.
The Hornets covering the spread.
But I think we're going to see two very run-heavy offenses, and I think that's nothing new for Minnesota. I think that's just who they are. I mean, they run more often than everybody but the option teams the last couple of years, and I think North Carolina is probably going to have to rely on it. And I do think because of that, there's a good chance we see more of Harrell, because I do think that it's going to give him more of it'll alleviate some of the ability to take away Hampton if there's another quarterback in there that you actually have to fear as a runner. And I don't think Minnesota's going to look across the line of scrimmage at Max Johnson and say, oh God, we got to keep that guy in the pocket. He's going to kill us. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. I think this is probably going to be a sluggish, low scoring affair.
All right. So I think, and this is just going to be from the North Carolina side, because then I get to ask some questions. I think that not only do you have Amarian Hampton, but you've got Darwin Barlow, who comes over in the transfer and is his last year of college eligibility. He has been, very vocal about wanting to participate in helping this team out a lot. I think the tight end room not just Bryson Nesbitt, but Copenhaver, and then all the way down to Jake Johnson, who we know can be a real weapon in an offense. I think the tight end room is loaded up. And while you don't have, the Tez Walker right at the very top, I think that between J.J. Jones and Nate McCollum and some of the rest of that wide receiver room, I'm not super concerned. The issue and the number one place where this goes really south for North Carolina is that their entire offensive line has been reworked. And that while they have one guy in Willie Lampkin, who's been there for a minute, but even not a very long time because he transferred into the program, it's a lot of new starters. It's a transfer from Georgia. It is a patchwork, put it together group that needs to be able to gel if they're going to win a sluggish game. Like if you're going to grind it out and run the football and just play a low possession game, you can't do it with a crappy offensive line or an offensive line that doesn't have their communication down. So that in a hostile environment on the road is the biggest question mark. Now, the question, does Minnesota under new defensive leadership and with a lot of turnover have the defensive personnel to overwhelm North Carolina at the line of scrimmage in a way that exposes what I think could be a concern for the Tar Heels? They do?
I think so. I think Minnesota's secondary is a far greater concern for Gophers fans than their line is. I think they got a pretty good D-line.
Yeah. Well, that to me is the biggest matchup question for me. Like quarterbacks, whatever, they'll figure it out.
This screams alt line to me.
Oh, like either way?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Both
you
teams
want to
minus
elaborate for
6.5.
those not familiar
Yeah,
with the
player
lingo?
availability uncertainty.
Yeah, both teams minus 6.5. That's my plan.
We have true pace uncertainty. UNC operates very fast. I assume that they will be somewhat slower this year because you don't have Drake May, but still everything says that they want to go fast. Max Long been a guy that advocates tempo. You have Minnesota who wants to play really slow. Like there are so many different ways this game could turn out. Like one team could get game scripted out of its comfort zone very quickly. It's a low certainty game for me. Not to mention it's week 1, so.
Yeah,
half unit on UNC minus 6.5, half unit on Minnesota minus 6.5. Let's go.
Is that the way the math works? Does it work that way?
It is for me on this one. If it's a close game, I only lose 1 unit. If it's not, I win. I mean, it's
all right. Danny, I know you're tight on time, so you gotta check in with you on this one. North Dakota State at Colorado. Do you think your Buffs are going to be ready to defend home turf against the Bison?
What's the line at now? Is it still around a touchdown?
9.5.
9.5.
I saw,
a little bit higher. I'm actually excited. I can't wait to see what happens. The circus continues off the field, which by saying that means we'll be forever banned from.
Yeah, don't say the word circus.
Yeah, exactly. Can't use that. But the roster, we've talked about it all off season, totally revamped. Shador's back, one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Like they should go out there and have a stat game. I mean, shoot, he's in my fantasy team, right? I should have put up big numbers, but I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get. Like in North Dakota State, that's the thing. When you are Colorado, when you are in everybody's timeline and everybody's feed, you are going to get everybody's best effort. And this already was a game probably that North Dakota State was going to circle because it's an opportunity versus a Power 4 opponent. So throw in the mix that it's also Colorado. They're going to get tested. I think this will be a test for them. I don't know if they get upset, but I think this will be a good battle for them. I'm excited to see it.
I think Colorado rolls them. I don't think North Dakota State is what it once was. They lost their head coach to go be the USC's linebacker coach. I've been watching some of their podcasts or trying to, and they've got apparently some key injuries here. I kind of doubt a lot of the casual people betting this are paying attention to that. It'll be a good little test for how Colorado stops the run because North Dakota State does want to stop the run. And we'll see if Colorado's guys want to stop the run or if they just kind of want to play the run on the way to the passer. Because that approach won't work. That approach gives us a game that is somewhat interesting in the second half. If Colorado's disciplined and cares about stopping the run here, then they should roll them, I think. I mean, I like their transfer class a lot better this year than I did last year. So
I agree with that. I don't have a good beat on North Dakota State.
They are the Bison. They play
Well,
in
I mean,
Fargo. They wear green and yellow.
Shout out. You pulled it up for those listening at home. Sam in the tailgate just offered a banger. Is Buffs versus Bison the heaviest battle of mascots?
It was a good one.
Elephants are pretty daggum heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, but
Did you guys see the clip that was going around with Steve Spurrier when he was at South Carolina and he had banned or boycotted a local reporter?
I remember
it was-
the beef with the reporter, but I haven't seen the clip.
It popped up in my feed and he's like talking to all the media and he's like, well, we got one guy who wants to be a little negative. So I'm just not going to talk to him. That's not my guy. And he's like, so here's what we're going to do. All you TV guys, we're going to go out in the hall over there. I'm going to give you all one-on-ones. And like, he goes through the whole game plan basically to screw over this one guy. So it's not like it's unprecedented to have been done before. I just always look at it like, what's the good that would come out of this?
It is
not a whole
100% not unprecedented, but how many have it in their contract?
Right.
That's kind of on Colorado for agreeing to that. But
Mhm.
Colorado was really desperate when they signed Dion, so I'm sure they would agree to whatever he asked for. It's also more of a concern if you plan to be there long term, right?
Right.
It's probably not smart to make the Denver Post,
Right.
the biggest paper in the state, your enemy if you're trying to maintain some sort of long-term relationship with the media in Colorado. If you're not, if you're two in barbecue, then you don't really care.
Right. I like the Kirby Smart approach. I don't know if y'all have ever seen his eye daggers that he throws into a certain outlet when they ask questions.
Or just give them the one-word answer. That kills them. You know, just say yes or no and just move on and do not fall for anything. That's a Kirby special too.
Yeah, I mean, I really pride the Cover 3 podcast on our ability to talk about, all kinds of FBS teams. We don't just focus on the power conferences. We try to hit them all. I don't have a good beat on North Dakota State. I know that Matt Ince left that team to go be an assistant for USC. And I know that while they've got a great pedigree and while they've got a style that I think I can copy and paste, I'm not going to feel good one way or the other. And maybe the fact that we're not buzzing about their chances to knock them off speaks to what Bud is, sort of saying with his hunch, is that maybe this is a spot where Colorado gets to beat down a national championship winning team, but, maybe a national championship winning team that is a little bit moved on past its prime, which could be good, could be good for the vibes there.
To go along with what Bud was saying, though, like this might make a reappearance on Thursday. Colorado over 34.5 because
team total.
Yeah, they are. It does not strike me as the kind of game where if they've got a chance to keep scoring, they're going to slow it down. They're going to keep scoring.
Yeah. Also, we're at week 1 where I've got no reason not to just like good numbers. Ooh, 34.5. Yeah, come on, let's throw it on the card.
Minus 108 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Back to your alt line. I've reached out, aka pulled up the sportsbook, FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can make every moment more. Minnesota minus 6.5 is plus 196, and then North Carolina minus 6.5 is plus 168. It's not a full.
But if it's a half unit each side and either one wins, I'm going to win money.
But isn't there a middle where you lose?
Yeah, but then I'm only losing 1 unit.
Okay.
It's Chip. We're not trying to win $1 billion here. I mean, maybe you can go hit your little 10-leg parlays if you want.
Whoa!
Did you hit a 10-legger?
No. Tom knows how I operate. Okay, we call it spray the board Saturday, not buckle everything up and tie them together.
It's entertainment.
Yeah, recreation,
Right.
ROI, recreation on investment.
Some of us are just looking for that 3%, Chip. That's all we're asking for.
I'm just looking for a winner. Let's go. We'll be having all of our best bets coming up on the locks episode. Danny had to run, but Danny will be. Oh, anything else in Colorado that we're looking for? I like that team total call, by the way.
No, I think that if you're Colorado, this is anytime you get a chance to look spectacular, you got to take advantage of getting the chance to look spectacular.
Couple things. First game jitters for left tackle Jordan Seaton.
Oh, yeah, freshman.
Yeah, freshman.
I've watched the videos. He looks like he's in really good shape. So, kudos to him for because they needed him to be. He looks in better shape now than he was when I saw him in Orlando back in January, which you would expect in a college strength program. I want to see how Warren Sapp's new defensive line plays and see, what they look like. I want to see what the Trevor Woods move to linebacker actually looks like. I know that he's talked about how he's up to 221 pounds. That's certainly bigger than he was. That's the guy who was playing safety for them last season. And I want to see, is Shiloh going to play? He was still in non-contact in the videos that I saw from Colorado's open practice. So I don't know what's going on there, but just interested to see if he does play. And if he doesn't, what do the backups look like?
Yep.
Also, I guess Charlie Offerdahl is going to be the starting running back from the stuff I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
So
Charlie Offerdahl, he's off with the ball. Boom, there you go.
Dallin Hayden was who we thought was going to be there, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know Prime loves Offerdahl. All the comments are always really positive. What I don't know is this sort of recognition for hey, you stayed, you worked hard, combat the narrative of that it's like a mercenary transfer team type thing. Or is Hayden not that good, or is Offerdahl just much better than I think? And will Colorado have a real run game this year? Because last year, they get RPOs at times, but not a ton. Shedeur is not really a run threat. So it's mostly just out of gun, kind of just handoff stuff without much of an RPO or ability to actually do some read option type stuff. So I don't know. We'll see what their run game looks like.
Also on Thursday, Danny will be in studio for coverage of Coastal Carolina and Jacksonville State.
Let's go.
Let's keep your eyes on that one. I think that's a 8 p.m. Eastern time kickoff there as Rich Rod gets his second year with the Gamecocks going. 8 p.m. kickoff from Amherst Stadium in Jacksonville. The Gamecocks a 2.5-point favorite. A little bit of a coin flip in this Cayusa Sunbelt showdown.
Has anybody in this game announced who their starting quarterback is?
Coastal hasn't.
And has Jax?
I haven't checked Jack's quarterback yet.
I've been looking and I have not seen Jax. So Jax is, I guess, between 3 dudes. So could we see 5 quarterbacks playing this game? I don't know.
I hope so.
That would be Smother. Now, granted, I'm not really sure any of these guys for Jax are any good. Smothers, who we saw last year with a limited sample set, they took Zion Turner from UConn, which very much fits that we want to run our quarterback motif there. And then also this kid named Tyler Huff from Furman. So we'll see how that goes. And Coastal's got Noah Kim from Michigan State and Ethan Vasco, who was there last year.
Does anybody else think it's kind of funny that we just went from a game called the Buffaloes versus the Bison to a game that's the Gamecocks versus the Chanticleers? It's literally same mascots, but different names.
Yeah, Chanticleers is just a fancy name for Gamecock, right?
It's like a rooster, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the Gamecocks got more weapons than the Chanticleer does.
Because they've got the razor blades on their.
Yeah, it's like the Chanticleer's in charge of an army with lances and spears, bows and arrows.
A Chanticleer runs an army?
Well, I mean, if
a rooster, Chip.
Well, it's aren't you of royalty? Aren't we talking
there are royal chickens?
If you're in the castle, buddy, you got some say so.
That's a good comment from Jesse in the chat. Legal to bet on this cockfight, baby.
Yeah.
Well done.
So those will be some of the games we'll have our eyes on Thursday night.
What about Illinois versus Eastern Illinois?
There's
that on the rundown.
There's a lot of FCS action on
61 FCS games this weekend. Something
yeah.
I think
we only have 39 FBS BFBS matchups.
We need to add an extra conference game, fellas.
Yeah, let's go.
Bangers, though, I will say.
Yes, yeah. Oh, absolutely. But you can piece together. You can piece together a really, really solid your main screen will have a good game for every primary TV window of the Thursday through Monday.
The other thing that we will see, I think some of these FCS, FBS games got pushed up to this week because more and more SEC teams are not playing the FCS game in week 13 before the rivalry game in week 14.
Mm. Yeah, I was looking at it. We've got, in the Big Ten, 6 FCS opponents, Illinois, Eastern Illinois among them. And one of the reasons I was looking at that is like, oh, buddy, we're going to be back on CBS Sports Network. That's right. 2 p.m. Tuesday, we are going to get you set for week 1. Come and hang out. Watch us on the mothership. You'll be able to check out all the action later as well. This is going to be a big, big week 1 for Penn State. It's going to be a big, big week 1 for USC. We'll go into those matchups. We'll give you what you need to look at. And then on the pod side on YouTube, we'll be back here live 11 a.m. Eastern time at youtube.com/cover3 on Wednesday for big game breakdown. More of the matchup points to the biggest games of Saturday and so much more. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.